Welcome to Inform New Hampshire. My name is Dean. This is my co-host Richie to my right, and our guest again, Pat Murphy. Welcome. We are broadcasting live on Mondays at 7:30 p.m., 6:30 p.m. Excuse me, Tuesday morning or Thursday mornings and Saturday and Sunday mornings. We also have a YouTube channel. We hope you'll tune in on YouTube. It's Inform New Hampshire. You can like us and you can subscribe to us, and we also have a Facebook group called Inform New Hampshire. So we welcome you to join us and watch us anytime you feel like it if you go onto YouTube, and certainly see the things that we post that we think are important on Facebook. Richie and I are still participating with the National Liberty Alliance, as Richie's been the state coordinator for a few years now, and I've been helping him. And the reason for that is we believe the country's in great peril, and for a long time we've felt that the solution to that was the common law grand juries, which was stolen from us back in 1946. And we are making some headway there. There's some movements going on all around the country to try to restore common law to our country, and the common law grand juries and the common law courts. And believe me, those are powerful tools for we the people to keep our government in check. And of course, what we have today is complete runaway criminal government, and largely because we no longer have that tool in our quiver, our arsenal, so to speak. So we also want to mention every week our friend Jerry DeLamus, who is still incarcerated out in Nevada. Richie, you want to say something about that?
Yes, I'd like to. Before I do that, I got a message for the judges out there. The common law jury is coming, and it's coming for you. Now, back to Jerry DeLamus. Jerry DeLamus was wrestled it's been about a year now. Last February it was. And he's been sitting in jail in Nevada because he didn't do anything wrong. Thank you, judges. And I'm hoping he gets out soon, very, very soon. He's been in there for over a year. Conditions are terrible. I just got a report yesterday about him. Anyway, if people in New Hampshire or anywhere in the country that might be listening to this want to donate some money to Jerry's legal aid fund, you can do so at freejerrydelemus.com. That's JERRYDELEMUS.com. And also keep him and Sue in your prayers. I'm sure they can use that just as much. Thank you.
All right, so today we want to talk about our president, President Trump, some of the things he's done so far, and of course some of the scandalous resistance that he's receiving from people who don't know what's going on but love the paycheck that comes from George Soros through many of his foundations that pays them to show up at events and cause trouble, raise a stink, and of course vandalize and assault people. So that's what we have going on in our country. We simply have the power elite who don't like Trump are funding the idiots at the low level to be combative and disruptive to our society. And the reason that they're doing that is because they are criminals. They are a criminal runaway syndicate, worldwide criminal syndicate that is now being confronted. They are exposed, and they have been being exposed for the last 15, 20 years, more so as time has gone by. And in the latest few years, of course, the internet has empowered the world to be informed and has also empowered the world to ferret out the criminal behavior that has gone on for a long time, but more recently has become very prolific amongst the power elite in the world and in this country. So, where do we want to start? Anyone?
What do you think the biggest things, most important thing is that he's done so far? What would you think?
Well, he hasn't done anything on illegal immigration, right?
The troublemaker.
The most
Why? What has he done?
thing. Put up a temporary ban on 7 countries for coming in to the country
Interactive war zones.
without a vetting process. And so all he did was he added a stronger vetting process to the people coming from 7 different countries.
Okay, so what was wrong about that?
Interestingly enough, now those 7 different countries are the same ones Obama had identified a few years back, but interestingly enough, those are the 7 countries. 6 of those 7 countries were the ones identified by General, I can't think of his name. During Clinton years, He identified the 7 countries we were going to go to war with over the next 10 years. And Clark, is that his name?
Yeah, Wesley Clark.
Wesley Clark.
Right.
And only one of those countries on the list was not part of his list back then, and that, I believe, was substitute Yemen for something. So that's interesting. It's very interesting, I think, because that would represent the old guard making decisions about what we do. However, as a strategy for President Trump, it might have behooved him to choose those 7 because Obama did,
Yeah.
and because it at least started the structure to be built up to be in place to stop the tyranny from coming in.
Well, there's a refusal to define the enemy, and he's the first to do that. And those are war zones, at least 2 active war zones, and the other actively train and recruit and export terrorists all over the world. You look at Europe, and you can see what's going on. So immigration that's a huge issue. I think the biggest thing that he did, the most critical thing that he did for this nation, was to save the United States military from the utter and total disrespect and disintegration that was going on under the Obama regime. Because once you lose that military, in this world with the nature of the enemies that are out there, with the strength that they have, even these meetings eventually wouldn't be going on. You'd be in a whole heck of a lot of hot water. So I think that there's a whole new attitude towards the military. You look at the people put in, like General Mattis. Just top shelf guys. The rules of engagement, they're no longer going to be such that our people are held out to dry or like a target. It's a whole different day in Dodge. They got a new sheriff in town. Yeah. So I think that was the most crucial thing that had to be done, was to reinfuse the traditional spirit into the United States military. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, it took Obama a couple of years to tear it down.
Yeah, and it's gone on for longer than that. You go all the way back to the Korean War, the no-win wars, relieving MacArthur of command, all the way through Vietnam. All of these things that have gone on for so long, they're all part of the same system. A lot of people actually believe that they were designed to rip the guts out of the United States military and its traditions and diminish the American people's confidence in its own institutions.
Done a good job.
They've done a good job. You go back and you look at Barry Goldwater as a candidate in '64, a great candidate, wrote a book called With No Apologies. You go to the last couple of pages of the book and he talks about the power brokers. And he says, listen, I've met these guys, I've rubbed shoulders with them. They're not communists, they're not socialists, they're not Nazis, they're not anarchists. They're people that are extremely powerful. I said, and they'll work with any group, no matter who it is, oppose them, befriend them, pit them against each other. He said, but it's their power, and the bottom line is all that counts. So he was actually talking about the globalists, the same people that Trump has pulled the carpet, is attempting to pull the carpet from under their feet. So.
Yep. All right, there's a few other things. I'm just going to read a couple of these. You guys can tell me what you want to comment on.
I would say one more thing in order of preference for the most important things that he's done. The second, or in line with that, is he established the rule of law, and that is huge, where he is going to allow Sessions to go after anything that they deem is illegal without any consideration as to who it is or how they're connected. Simply, if you feel that the law has been broken, then your prosecutors you're free to start to look and to carry out indictments, and that has got to be done in this country. It's absolutely imperative that people out there are so disgusted with the system of law in this country and the rampant corruption.
Well, if they continued on that path, Pat, we'd have a civil war. Because if we don't have the rule of law, what you're going to have is total anarchy, which means a revolution, a riot. I don't know, call it what you will.
There's no predictability without it. Why would you build a business? Why would you invest money in something when you can't even tell the next month what's going to happen in that particular area in terms of ordinances or availability of resources, the law as regards any of these things? It's crazy.
Good point. It's a good point.
Here's another important one, but putting the nail in the TPP's coffin. So he withdrew us from that trade agreement, which, international treaty, which would have been a disaster. Would have taken away our sovereignty and given it to the corporate heads.
That would have been the final nail on the coffin, as far as I'm concerned.
They've been destroying the middle class worldwide, and especially in the United States for decades now. That was one of their major impediments that this country took off, especially after the Second World War, in terms of individual ownership and wealth and the ownership of private property. Mm-hmm. The problem that you had was when you have a middle class, if they have enough money, they have the time to examine events and to become involved civically. Mm-hmm. And so they can look at the trend of things and they can offer They can offer criticisms, they can become involved, but if you're at the subsistence level and you're struggling from day to day, working multiple jobs, you're never going to challenge the system that's established. So you watch that whole middle class being eradicated. And that's been a class historically in every country that's been in the forefront of liberty movements, independence movements that have argued historically for access to courts, written documents, the protection of private property, imaginative people that want to develop their own image, they have their own ideas on what they want to be, creative people, etc. So,
Yep. Here's one you might not know about. In foreign affairs, a strike in Yemen, sanctions on Iran. So those two. Trump approved a SEAL Team 6 raid aimed at al-Qaeda militants in Yemen. The government claims that an al-Qaeda leader named Abdullah al-Duhab was killed. The strike also killed both a member of SEAL Team 6, which conducted it, and the 8-year-old daughter, citizen daughter of the late al-Qaeda leader Anwar al-Awlaki, officials confirmed. So I don't know if you knew about that.
he's going to go right after him. He said he's going to go after him and not tolerate it. So.
Yep. Also imposed some sanctions against Iran for the ballistomistic test, which I'm not a fan of at all. I just don't believe we should be doing that. I don't think the missile test was.
Yeah.
I don't think it was the kind of missiles that they're forbidden to fire.
Yeah.
I don't think it was international ballistic missiles. I think it was other kind of missiles. I don't know. I could be wrong. I was just reading about it, and I'm just not sure that's a good
Any
thing.
of those things that are talking about potential conflict, you want to really, really watch them.
Yep.
I mean, you watch
I know.
it with the other candidate that could have gotten in right now. If she had gotten in, she'd probably be in the Führer bunker trying to get a hold of her St. Vitus dance while the rest of the country was carbonized. I mean, it was insane to be calling for. It was insane to be calling for conflict with Russia and amassing troops on the border. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. Have you learned anything at all? But I mean, take a look at your foreign policy. What we had with that individual that I think he's a product of an illicit tryst between Thurston Howell III on Gilligan's Island and Lurch, a.k.a. John Kerry.
Kerry, yeah.
Right? I mean, look at the caliber of people that we've had out there, and what they have done to the foreign policy in this nation. It's almost a joke worldwide. But I mean, when they're talking about going to war and stuff like this, it's like, hang on just a second.
All right, well, consider this. The Iran deal was a horrible deal. So suppose that it was pre-planned that the Iran deal was going to be a horrible deal, and that Trump would come into office and confront Iran and frame Iran for doing the stuff they're doing. But Iran has been on the chopping block for a very long time, so nothing's changed in that regard if Trump is going after him.
Yeah.
So that's my feelings on that.
Yeah.
I'm very concerned about that.
I'm very concerned about all that stuff,
Yeah.
And the whole history of this country has been how the population, the mass of the population, is massaged and coaxed, and how PR is used against the entire population, and that's been true especially for most of the 20th century, in particular since the First World War. And people don't understand the effects of propaganda, how subtle it can be, how effective it is. They just don't get it, and they're worked on constantly, just about everything on television, almost everything, 100% of it.
Well, they've washed the history out of the classroom, so the kids today coming up don't know about it. Me and you do, but we're the last generation.
Oh, it's a huge political weapon. You have no identity. You're going to be reshaped. You're going to be a massive wax to be reshaped the way they want, and that's what they're all about. They're all about a system. And your country is about a lack of a system, maximum freedom. That's what Lenin said. Communism is a system. Bolshevism is a system. It's imposed from the top down onto people.
Housing policy. The rollback of a last-minute Obama rate cut. So in the final weeks of the Obama administration, the Department of Housing and Urban Development announced it planned to cut interest rates for federal housing administration-backed home loans by 0.25% in a few weeks. But when Trump first took office, his administration immediately suspended this planned rate cut, therefore blocking a move that would have made home loans for many first-time borrowers slightly less expensive. I think that's a cost-benefit analysis move on his part. But financial regulations, starting the process of rolling back some of Obama's regulations. Trump signed an executive order instructing the Labor Department to reconsider the fiduciary rule an Obama regulation that requires retirement advisors to act in the best interest of their clients. That sounds odd. I don't know.
He's going to try to make money available to the smaller banks at low interest, which hasn't been done, which is key to jump-starting everything.
Right.
And to giving people more confidence in what he's doing. But the problem there is, like you say, you have financial elites. Goldman Sachs gave 100% of its funding to Hillary Clinton. There wasn't a cent that went to Donald Trump. So he's up against he's got a tough battle on his hands. So.
Well, he also signed a more preliminary order instructing the Treasury Department and financial regulatory agencies to start the process of rolling back rules resulting from Obama's Dodd-Frank financial reform, which is critical.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be what you're talking about.
Yeah.
With the banking stuff. So we all know about going after Obamacare.
Yeah, let me jump in here with something, because you alluded to it twice, Pat, and you said it before on this show, this top-down, bottom-up that's been happening for years and years and years. And somebody made a good point of it the other day with me, and I want to repeat it. Since Trump is in there, he's the top-down now, but in a good way, not a bad way. At least I see it that way. We, the people, should be the bottom-up, helping him to restore the middle class and bring back strength to this country. And with that, I wanted to mention that there is a plan in the works. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, I'll leave that up to your discretion. But there's a conference call this Sunday, and I'm inviting people, in particular in New Hampshire, but anyone in the country can listen in. We'll divulge the plan and tell you where we're going with this thing, and if you'd like to climb on board and get active, that's great. We'd love to have you. It's this coming Sunday, the 12th, I believe is the date, I hope, at 3:30 p.m., and the phone number is 1-712-770-4160, and the access code is 998-086 #. So please feel free to join us. We'd love to have you on board. We need people. The way that this is going to work is for people to come together as Americans, only Americans, and our mission is to restore the rule of law. So you're welcome to come on board and listen in.
Any comments on his Supreme Court choice?
That's a great choice. You
know?
got a strict constructionist, Gorsuch, and it's about time that we had somebody like that. And of course, you're running into a whole lot of hostility right now. But I don't know what the Democrats are going to do if they filibuster and filibuster and filibuster. They may wind up ultimately shooting themselves in the foot. They might wind up with a change in the rules eventually on that, so that if he wasn't seated, everything after that would simply fly through on every single appointment. So they're showing themselves to be more and more out of control, and that you have a core that's extremely, extremely hardcore and leftist, and is
Criminals.
They're almost deranged as far as I'm concerned. You have people abandoning that party. They're on their last legs. I think their true colors have come out.
Yeah.
They're not going to change. It's not going to change.
Well, we'll see what happens.
We have to do our part, that's all.
Well, it's local control, and it's the average guy and the average woman educating their children. The education is such a key. I hope that he gets rid of the NEA. We don't need a Department of Education. That has been an unmitigated disaster, and that's something that has to change. You're going to produce a whole generation of these kids that are just a herd of sheep.
Well, they already have, and that's been a long time coming.
But you got younger kids coming along now, though, that are a little more attuned to things, and they realize that they're going to have to take a different stance and not believe that things come from either of these parties, but in particular Democratic Party. It's not a party that really has done things for working people. It's a pretended idealism. Just look at this thing with all the gender fluidity that they're talking about in some of these schools, where they're up in the auditorium and you got a bunch of these kids and they're at all different stages of development, and suddenly you have a whole language that you have to use. You have invented pronouns that you have to use. What's that remind you of? That's logocracy. Mm-hmm. They're saying you're going to sit there, you're going to listen to this, you're going to use this language we've constructed that deals with this ethical situation, and you're going to accept that. So you're being forced to participate in that ritual, and that created that language. I mentioned the last time I think we were together, Jordan Peterson, professor that deals a lot with Nazi Germany and the use of language. If you pull him up, that's a good site to take a look at that whole concept of language as changing reality and consciousness and being the first thing that they do in the building of a dictatorship.
I think a lot of that also is that these kids are under chemical attack, because you have you got bisphenol A in plastics, you've got other estrogen mimickers in the water, even in the groundwater now. And so a lot of that logocracy, as you call it, is being augmented by the bio warfare that's going on against our country. And of course, it's much larger than just the estrogen mimickers. It's fluoride, it's barium,
We're getting bombarded with poisons.
barium, aluminum in the air with the.
No, hopefully Trump is going to deal with some of that. We deal with the GMO and Monsanto and all these different things we hear about. Russia almost went to war on some of these issues, saying we don't want that stuff at all. And we see it as a huge weapon against our people, That's a country that's starved during the Second World War.
Well, a whole herd of countries has banned GMO products from the United States because they recognize.
Yeah.
Well, number one, the corn in this country is now 97% GMO, if not more.
Yeah.
Now that corn, when it's fed to rats, causes them to have 100% sterilization after 3 generations and massive organ failure.
Wow.
And we're already into 2nd generation of eating that GMO crap. So what do you think about that?
I'm avoiding corn tonight.
Corn oil is in everything, man. Corn
That's
oil
for
is in
sure.
everything.
I heard that if an insect lands on it, it takes some of the enzyme out of it, that their stomach actually ruptures.
Yep.
So I'm saying, that's it's a scary thing.
It's horrible. Well, Richie and I had a conversation with someone. Should we mention that last night about?
Not his name, but yeah.
Yeah, we have a good friend that's developed a new water purification product that pulls it out nearly 100% of all contaminants at a very low price, very consistent, very available, and it's taken off. It's already in a couple cities in New Hampshire, I believe, Rochester, and what was the other one?
Dover, I believe.
Dover.
I think.
So you guys in Rochester and Dover have some clean water. You're the first in the nation. Congratulations. It's actually real water, clean, and it doesn't have the fluoride, the estrogen mimickers, the chlorine, chloride, all that stuff. So
Basically, what we were told is that it breaks it down to hydrogen and oxygen, which is water. 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen.
it's
water.
nanotechnology,
Yeah.
and it's done from he came up with a certain type of mathematical formula to rearrange volcanic material so that when the water goes through, it's trapping those products at smaller than the nanoparticle, but a pico particle, I think it is. 4 pico size, whereas water is 3 pico size, so it goes through. Anyway, that type of technology is new age, new generation technology, and there's going to be waves of that type of technology coming out. Some of it from, believe it or not, Antarctica. And that's why you have some of the high levels of state traveling down there over the last 20 years. And of course they keep it secret because they're scumbags and they don't want the world to have the new
Yeah,
technologies.
the other thing, Dean, I wanted to say that the individual who came up with this creation, or whatever you want to call it, for the water, is a very unique individual. He's thought of very highly by myself and Dean. And I'm glad that it fell into his hands, because I guess on more than one occasion, the pharmaceutical companies and some other ones have tried to take it from him. And he won't let it. It's going to humanity. And I admire him for that. Anything I can do to help him, I will. So I applaud that. And there's other things out there, too, that I know we don't have time to talk about it, but there are other inventions out there that the government is suppressing, or corporate America is suppressing, that need to come out that can help people and help us. We don't need to be treated like cattle. We don't have to tolerate it.
And that's some of corporate America, some.
Yeah.
Vast majority of great companies, and they provide a lot of employment, a lot of research and development. But there are those that are in the club, so to speak, that
The big
Well, look out there.
multinationals are
their
usually guilty.
own interests. I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily all of them, but I'm not going through a list right now. There's so many of them.
Well, if you consider that 150 mile per gallon gas carburetor, gas engines were available back in the 1950s, and that technology was buried, suppressed, and has been. And at this point, that technology could give your car 1,000 mile per gallon. Gasoline doesn't burn. The fumes burn. And so when you're spraying gasoline into a chamber, all that liquid is wasted, but the fumes catch on fire and they explode the chamber, the piston, right? If all you put in there was more of a heated gasoline that put the fume in there, you'd be using 1/100th of the gas, liquid gas, and you'd be getting a much higher gasoline mile per gallon. Now that technology has been worked out by a number of different inventors, and they all got either bought out, killed, or suppressed in some way or another. So you still make 25 miles per gallon on your engine. So you have to continue to pay money to the energy industry. Same thing is happening within the medical industry, where you have doctors who come up with cures for disease, including cancer and other disease, and they lose their license, their laboratories burn, they disappear to South America, things like that happen.
Sure.
And there's a long list in recent years, and this is a big buzz in the metaphysical community right now, where there's a big list of naturopathic doctors who were more the leading edge naturopathic doctors who have been suicided, murdered, or whatever, and it's been happening in the last couple years. And of course, they are a threat to the allopathic medical industry that is designed. When you think of the onslaught of poisons being put into our system, that's designed to make us sick, and then they take all our money when we have to go into the disease care system, which doesn't create health. It creates, disease perpetration. Or is that the right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Perpetual.
The list goes on and on with that stuff. You got the Tesla coil.
Yep.
From what I understand, and you learn about that in school, but not the full extent of it. I mean, if you put them up, this is what they're saying anyway. If you put those up on telephone poles, every other one, you could eliminate these power plants all over the country. And look at the toxins that those things put into the air, right? And you
Yep.
don't have the EMF that you do now with all the lines. So,
No.
those radioactive, not radioactive, I'm sorry, the frequencies that affect all of us wouldn't be to the extent that they are at a much lower level. So that in itself is something that we should look into. But there again, it's being suppressed.
I think we're going to see a lot with the Trump administration. He's been in for a couple of weeks, and we've never seen anything remotely close to this.
Well, that's my whole point, is you're going to see a lot of these technologies allowed to come forth in this coming months and year. But this year is going to be a big year for waves of new technology. So
Just please realize you can't watch the mainstream media. There's nothing truthful about them
nothing.
at all. I don't care who they are, whether it's a Fox News network, any of them. We're getting it from each other, from the internet, and all of that. And it's funny, the ones that will challenge Trump that they thought they were really something, they found out that American people are behind him. You looked at Tokyo Rose / Access Sally / Megyn Kelly.
Yeah, yeah.
Down in flames. It's like, tell you what, you're too big for your britches. He's got a lot more backing than they let on, and that's true. That's true in the U.S. Senate, and you'd be surprised.
Well, they were
he's
buying into their own propaganda about how well Hillary's doing and how poorly Trump was doing. And meanwhile, Trump's got 30,000 people in his rallies, and Hillary Clinton had 100, and half of those were staffers. So, they're just bought into that stuff.
They had to bribe them to come from the local pizza joint to get down here.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're about out of time. Is there anything you want to add, Richie?
No, just join the call this Sunday. Everyone's welcome.
All right. So thank you for your time tuning in this week. We hope to see you next week. Have a great week.
Thank you.